Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, DodgerFest is coming in about a week and a half, and it's going to be expensive. And we're going to talk about if maybe a lot of things might be more expensive now that the Dodgers have spent $60 zillion this offseason. We'll also talk a little bit more Hall of Fame. We'll talk about the possibility of some former Dodgers who are in the Hall of Fame having their numbers eventually retired. And we will look ahead to next year's Hall of Fame ballot. So that's what's on tap. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. My name is Jeff Snyder. My co-host next to me, that's Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like a lot of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And Vince, thanks for holding down the fort for me yesterday. It's good to be back with you. Always a lot of fun doing an episode with you. Having some back and forth is, I don't mind talking to myself. I'm kind of used to it, but I also like talking to you. So, I'm glad we're both here today.
Yeah, I know. Before we used to try to do every day together. Now we've kind of given ourselves a little bit of grace, but still better when we're together.
For sure. But you did a good job. So good episode. If you haven't listened to yesterday's yet, you should listen to that one. We are going to talk a little bit more about the Hall of Fame, which Vince talked about yesterday. But first, we're going to talk about DodgerFest, which is the new name for what used to be called FanFest. And several things are different this year. The first thing that was clearly different was that they're charging money just to get in. It used to be that FanFest was free to get in, and then you pay for the experiences. And now you have to pay. It's only $10, but it does cost money to get in. And then the experiencers are different too. Used to be they would have autograph lines where there would be two players, either current or former, and at each session, and you would buy a ticket to a session, and that would get you to the opportunity to stand in line and go get those autographs. My son and I did that in 15 maybe. We got in the line with Ron Say and Kenley Jansen, and it was fun. Got Kenley the previous year. I had taken a picture of my son with Kenley Jansen, and so I printed that up and got that autographed by Kenley, and it's hanging on my son's bedroom wall still. It's kind of cool to have a picture of him with Kenley, autographed by Kenley. This year, they're doing things differently. They're not doing the autograph sessions. They're doing kind of a more, I guess they're calling them meet and greets, and having sometimes more than just the two players, and it's a different experience. It's actually a Q&A and a picture, I think, and an autograph. Problem is they're pricey, huh, Vince?
Yeah, and it's different from what just an autograph. It's Q&A with the group of the session that you're in, and then you get a photo, I'm assuming with every player, I would hope, and an autograph from each player. Like you mentioned, there's some with two players, or some with three players, and one with four players. And $250 for these sessions, for these experiences. And for $250, there's no Shohei Ohtani, no Mookie Betts, no Freddie Freeman, no Tyler Glasnow, Yamamoto, no Max Muncy. Or yeah, there is Max Muncy. But again, I know that a lot of this stuff is, I believe it's all for the Dodgers Foundation, not for the actual Dodger team. So, I can get away with a little bit of a price increase, but, no offense to these guys, but there's one session with Alex Vesia, Ryan Yarbrough, and JP Feyereisen. JP Feyereisen hasn't even pitched for the Dodgers yet, and I don't know how many fans, would know him just based on the fact that he hasn't pitched with them. and Vesia. And it's one of those things where for $250, you can almost just drive to Arizona for 2 days, spend a little bit more than that, but have a better chance of getting more players. But again, everyone, has different experiences. There's 5 sessions total. By now, 3 of them are sold out. Tony Gonsolin, Bobby Miller sold out. Gavin Lux, James Outman sold out. Max Muncy, Will Smith sold out. Then you got one with Vesia, Yarbrough, Fireeisen still available. And then one with Sheehan, Michael Grove, Gavin Stone, and Kyle Hurt still available. There's a bunch of other experiences. There's one with Andre Ethier that's $160. That is more worth the money. You get to have lunch and hear from Ethier, have a Q&A. You get an autographed photo and lunch provided. There's a bunch of tours and different stuff like that. So again, everyone fans a different way, but for me, I'm a little bit spoiled because I've seen a lot of stuff and I get to interact with some of these players and all that type of stuff. So for me, it's not worth it, but for some of you guys, it might be.
Yeah, it is interesting that they didn't do any sort of variable pricing. I guess they tried to, the people who they thought were less in demand. That's why they put more people in the group to try to even that out. That one with the 4 young pitchers, that one could be intriguing. Sheehan, I'm still high on Gavin Stone and Kyle Hurt. That's some potential for some pretty good pitchers in the future. It could be one that you look back on 10 years from now and say, wow, remember when for only $250 I got, autographs from all these guys. But it does, there have been concerns. When the Dodgers signed Ohtani, there were a lot of jokes going around about, a $150 Michelada at a Dodger game and everything. We'll have to see what prices go up, what they look like. We obviously the resale market is going to be ridiculous. Season ticket holders, we were talking before we started recording, kind of got a lucky break here because one of the downsides of being a season ticket holder is if you have to pay for next year's tickets in like September. And so season ticket holders already locked in their pricing before the Dodgers signed Ohtani. So they're probably going to make a killing on the secondary market, any tickets that they're selling, because there's going to be a lot of demand there. I'm hoping and assuming the Dodgers themselves won't raise prices any more than they would have anyway. Dodgers are always going to raise prices. In the 10 years I had season tickets, my price is more than doubled. That's just kind of the nature of the beast, what the market will bear or whatever. When it comes to DodgerFest, I didn't have an issue at all with them charging admission. I think that makes sense because knowing there's going to be a huge demand. And sometimes, when you've been to what used to be called FanFest, like it can get so crowded that it's almost not super fun at times. And so, making people pay even a nominal price like $10, it will control the crowd a little bit more and they can have better control over, okay, how many people are we expecting? So I don't mind that. And like I said, because these are for charity, I don't even really mind that, I guess. The fact is, like you said, 3 of the 5 are already sold out. And so apparently it's worth it to enough people. And I assume that these other 2 will sell out. And if not, maybe they'll drop the price on those. We'll see. But, hopefully, I guess Dodger fans can view it as I'm doing my charitable good and don't mind paying. The money's not going to the pockets of billionaires. If they raise prices at the stadium for games and concessions and all that, at that point, then I think we may start to see a little bit of an uproar.
Yeah, I think whatever concessions cost last year, they were going to be higher this year, regardless of who they signed. Again, we don't know what the difference would have been, and if the Dodgers are going to try to capitalize and maybe add 50 cents a dollar here to some of these things. Ticket prices, like you mentioned, season ticket holders account for, I think I want to say around 35,000 tickets, every game already. So those were kind of already locked in. It'll be, resale is where it's going to go, and that normally doesn't go to the Dodgers. I know that there is some ways it can go to the Dodgers through like StubHub or whatever.
And if it doesn't, they'll try to cancel your tickets.
Yeah, so there's different ways to go about it. But again, everything was going to go up, but we don't know by how much, and we don't know if they're going to add, the tax on top of that. I do think that the Dodgers were already one of the more expensive ways to go to a game, especially the last few years after the pandemic. There was not really, before the pandemic, you could get good seats for about $15-$20, either reserve or the corners are low, or even sometimes field level $20-$25. Those days have kind of gone away. And I am interested to see, the new generation of fans can watch the games, but maybe not go to as many. Cause like we used to go to not a lot of Dodger games, but enough to make it worth it. And that's kind of where, there's always going to be the questions of the normal family of four. Can they afford to go to a Dodger game? And it might be tougher this year, especially with resale prices.
Yeah. We'll have to see. It might get painful for a little while. But DodgerFest coming up February 3rd. That's a week from Saturday. So if you're going, let us know. We'd love to hear. And if you go, we'd love to hear how it is, especially if you get any of these experiences. But yeah, let us know. We'll give all that contact info later. We're going to come back in a minute. We're going to talk about guys who are in the Hall of Fame who played for the Dodgers and whether any of their numbers might ever be retired. So please keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL regular season is over. The postseason is almost over. There's one more week of playoffs before we get to the big game, but there's still plenty of time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, it's a great time to do it because new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. You don't have to win the bet. Just place a $5 bet and boom, $150 in bonus bets. $150 win or lose. And the app is so easy to use. There are so many different ways to bet. You can do live same game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays, and so much more. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Hey, we're back. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Especially want to thank our everydayers. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning, and you can make that easy on yourself by subscribing wherever you're watching and listening right now. I also want to remind you, the Locked On Podcast Network is your team every day, and the network has 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube that you might be interested in. One is called Locked On Sports Today, and the other is called Locked On Sports Los Angeles. Obviously, the Los Angeles one focuses specifically on Los Angeles sports, whereas Locked On Sports Today is, sports across the country. Either way, though, you can get your whole sports fix in one place, 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Also want to remind you, you can become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. It's a great way to support us financially. For just a few bucks a month, you get text blasts from us with our thoughts on rumors, news, musings, different times, and you can text back and forth with us. We can have conversations. It's a lot of fun. For those of you who are over there with us right now, we're really enjoying it. So check that out. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. So with Adrian Beltre being elected to the Hall of Fame this week, he was a Dodger, and he had probably his best individual season, definitely his best offensive season as a Dodger, his last year with the Dodgers. And then he went to the Mariners, and then he went to the Red Sox, and then he went to the Rangers. Chances are he'll have a Rangers hat on in his Hall of Fame plaque. He could be one of those guys who they just put a logoless cap on his plaque because he did play, his time was split among different teams. But, it's not crazy to think that they could at least consider having him go in with the Dodger logo on his cap. Probably won't happen, but it got us thinking, Vince, in the event that it did happen, whether with Beltre or with somebody else in the future, somebody who didn't necessarily play long enough with the Dodgers to be what we would consider a Dodger legend, but, played long enough and his career was such that he did end up with a Dodger logo on his Hall of Fame plaque. Would the Dodgers retire his number? And so we're thinking with Adrian Beltre, we've talked in the past a little bit about Mike Piazza, that he should have been a Dodger legend and did have, again, probably his best statistical seasons as a Dodger, but, was more well-known for his time with the Mets. Different guys like that. I don't know, like Can you picture anybody, Vince, either who's already in the Hall of Fame or who could go in the Hall of Fame in the future, who might end up with the number retired, even if he's not necessarily considered a Dodger legend?
Yeah, I mean, Freddie Freeman would be the only one, and a lot would have to happen in the next few years, and maybe even past that if he stayed with the team beyond the Dodgers. Right now, I think Mookie Betts, the fact that he's locked up for another 8-9 years, whatever it is, assuming he stays on this path and trajectory, he'll be going in as a Dodger. Shohei Ohtani, assuming he stays on this path and trajectory, will go in as a Dodger. And I think Beltre and Piazza are both very good cases, because I talked about yesterday about Beltre and how close, how close the counting stats were between his time with the Dodgers and his time with the Rangers. Closer than I even thought. Again, in terms of accolades, he got all his accolades once he left the Dodgers. He won 1 Silver Slugger here, and then with the Rangers, he won. He was an All-Star, Gold Glove, Silver Slugger, all that type of deal. So I think him with the Rangers is probably right. But Piazza for me was one of those where it was interesting because fans of my age, or even a little bit older, or a little bit younger, give or take, Piazza was probably their favorite player growing up, or one of their favorite players growing up. And when I went to, that was the year Griffey got inducted with Piazza. So I went to the actual ceremony, and it was in New York. So obviously there was a lot of Mets fans, and for them to have, revere for Piazza, I never realized how much he was loved with the Mets. And I know there was a few different reasons for that. But again, when you go to look at his numbers, he played one more year with the Mets than the Dodgers. In terms of number of games, it was a little bit more of a difference. But in terms of counting stats as well, he had over 100 and about 150 games more with the Mets. But homer wise, he was about 50 homers around there, about 100 RBIs around there. Hit with the Dodgers, hit 331, had a 966 career OPS, 160 OPS plus. Was an all-star with the Dodgers 6 times, was an all-star with the Mets 6 times, had way more MVP finishes with the Dodgers, way more Silver Sluggers, was Rookie of the Year. And I know that they had, a sour ending, and I know that it never really got repaired. And the people that were in charge now weren't the people that were in charge back then, so it might have been a weird thing. But for me, it was always weird. And maybe they reached out and Mike Piazza declined, but it was always weird for me that Piazza wasn't considered more to be brought out to the stadium, or to be considered for his number to be retired or something like that, because everything is kind of there for him more so than even Beltre.
Yeah, Piazza was a significantly better player for the Dodgers than for anybody else he played for. And yeah, you do wonder how much those personal feelings came into it. Obviously, the same reason that fans are still mad that Mike Piazza got traded, or the reasons that Piazza's mad that he got traded. It's, going back to the Freddie Freeman idea, he might actually be the opposite here, where I would guess, unless the Dodgers win 3 of the next 4 World Series, and Freeman is, World Series MVP 1 or 2 times, I would guess it's almost a lock that if Freddie Freeman makes Hall of Fame, he's going to have a Braves cap on, on his plaque. And that's where, there's the Dodgers have the policy of only retiring the numbers of Hall of Famers. There's just the 2 exceptions, Jim Gilliam and now Fernando Valenzuela. But there's nothing specifically that says, and they have to have gone in the Hall of Fame as a Dodger. So they could retire Mike Piazza's number. And Freddie Freeman, it seems like he would be a very good possibility to have his number retired, even if he goes in with the Braves cap on. And that would be I don't know if that would necessarily be precedent setting as far as it might open things up for other people, but yeah, it will be kind of weird, weird for the Dodgers. There's other teams. The Padres have Steve Garvey's number retired. The Brewers retired Hank Aaron's number. So many guys who played not very much with the team, but for, Steve Garvey, it's because of his role in there in 1984 postseason. Hank Aaron, it's more of a Milwaukee loves you because he started with the Milwaukee Braves and then finished with the Milwaukee Brewers. So there's reasons, but Freddie Freeman is a fan favorite. He's only played for the Dodgers for 2 years, and there's already the makings of Dodger legend, even if he does only play these 6 years with them.
Yeah, and that's going to be the one case. Again, they could pick up other guys as time goes on, but I think Piazza and Freeman are similar cases in different ways. And again, it's one of those where we don't know all the story behind Piazza. For Freddie, we'll for sure know what the story is. More than likely, I don't think there'll be any bad blood toward the end of it. And it's one of those, I think the Dodgers have kind of started to cut into this in terms of, nipping stuff like this in the bud with the the Dodgers, what is it, the Wall of Fame or the Hall of, what is it? The ring
Legends of
of,
Dodger
yeah,
baseball.
yeah, that one. So they can get away with stuff like this, but because it's one of those where at a certain point, do retired numbers lose a little bit of value? I think the Yankees got to that point. Luckily for them, in a certain way, there hasn't necessarily been anybody in the last 10 years or so, after Jeter, that have really maybe warranted this. Maybe Judge down the line would warrant it, or maybe Garrett Cole down the line would warrant it, but they've kind of run out of those numbers. And you never want to get too happy with the number retiring, I think. So I think Freddie Freeman would be a perfect fit, like you said, unless he's becomes a postseason World Series legend here in the next few years, or he extends beyond that and plays a little bit longer and has closer to 10 seasons rather than 6 seasons. I think there's the case for him to have the number retired. If not, I think it looks like one of those where the legends of Dodger baseball will be calling his name.
Yeah, for sure. So the 2024 class of the Hall of Fame is set. We're going to come back in a second. We're going to look forward at the 2025 ballot and see what former Dodgers are on there and who we think might be going in. Maybe we'll argue a little bit. So please keep it locked on Dodgers. Hey, we're back. Thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, especially our everydayers. Remember to become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. There's a free 2-week trial. It's just a few bucks a month, and you can text back and forth with us and get our thoughts before the podcast on rumors, news, all that stuff. And be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the two 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. And with that said, three players going into the Hall of Fame this year, which means there are a lot of guys holding over to next year. I think there were 8 or so who dropped off the ballot, including one that made me happy, Bartolo Colon. You know how I feel about Bartolo. I was happy that people draw the line at the fake Bartolo love when it comes to Hall of Fame voting. But
That's
next
why
year,
it's fun and not real. It's just fun love.
yeah, and that's good. That's good that people can recognize the difference. So with that said, we've got next year's ballot. Like I said, there's plenty of holdovers. Looks like 14 holdovers next year. Billy Wagner will be in his last year on the ballot. Manny Ramirez on his second to last year. Andrew Jones and Omar Vizquel, they're third to last. And then going down from there. But some of the first ballot guys, or the first guys, their first time on the ballot, CC Sabathia, Ichiro, Ian Kinsler, Dustin Pedroia, Felix Hernandez. As far as former Dodgers, we got Curtis Granderson, Russell Martin, Hanley Ramirez. I think that's it for former Dodgers making their first appearance on the ballot next year. I guess let's start, Vince, with those first timers. Any of those guys or any other first timers who I didn't mention jump out at you as guys you would vote for the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, well, Ichiro's for sure going to be first ballot getting in next year. I got to imagine CC will too, just for the simple fact of he was good on the field, had all the stuff off the field, and has been an MLB ambassador for the last few years. I think that's going to help his case for sure. If he doesn't have the numbers, the other way. Felix Hernandez is an interesting one because if you're really going to, especially for pitchers, kind of moving on in the future, there's not going to be the 300 wins. There's not going to be like the 3,000 strikeouts still achievable, but you're not going to have some of the counting stats that some of these guys in the past have had. And, Felix was one of those first ones that did win the Cy Young with the 13-12 record, went back kind of bucking the trend of wins, meaning a lot more than anything else. So it'll be interesting to see what his case is. But I think it's Ichiro and CC for sure. Billy Wagner fell 5 votes short. I'd imagine he'd get those the next year. And then you kind of start seeing the cases for these other guys. Chase Utley got almost 30% this year. Andrew Jones was up to 61%, I believe, this year. I think you'll start to see those guys moving up. And, it's interesting to see what kind of cases will start getting made. Bobby Abreu's another one where, if you start really breaking down the numbers, like he was pretty good. You'll get, Carlos Beltran, we'll see, how long he gets. I would imagine he gets in eventually, but how long, they'll kind of hold him back from it because of what happened in 2017. And that might be another topic for another day of him specifically versus like steroid guys. But yeah, I think there'll be at least 2 guys in it, or at least 3 guys in next year. And some of the other guys will start climbing, because the year after that, I don't think there's really anybody. So there'll be more room for these 10 guys that they have to vote for.
Yeah, Ichiro is a really interesting case for me because, everybody agrees he's a Hall of Famer. There's talk of, will he be the first unanimous position player in the Hall of Fame? I think that's a silly distinction. It's not something I get fired up about who wouldn't vote for whoever, okay, whatever. As long as he gets in the Hall of Fame, that's all anybody really cares about. But you look at his career, and it really is like the tale of 2 careers, because his first 10 seasons, he was one of the best hitters we've ever seen. At 331, had an OPS plus of 117, despite not really hitting for any power. But even then, 258 doubles, that's, solid 71 triples, 90 homers in those first 10 years. But just, 2,244 hits in his first 10 seasons, averaged 224 hits a year for his first 10 seasons. And the problem is, because he played in Japan for a while before he came over, those first 10 seasons took him through age 36. And then he played 9 more seasons, although even that you have to kind of put an asterisk, because the last 2 seasons he played a total of 17 games. The 2 games of 2019 were entirely ceremonial. But, in those 9 seasons, his OPS plus was 83. He had only 845 hits in those 9 seasons, batted 268. Ichiro was a bad hitter the last 9 years of his career. And when you look at his first 10 years, 10-time All-Star, got MVP votes in 9 seasons, Gold Glove all 10 seasons. And then after that 10-year mark, nothing. No All-Star games, no MVP votes, no Gold Gloves, no Silver Sluggers, nothing. The only black ink is games played and at bats after those 10 years. And so, obviously he's a Hall of Famer, but when you look at his overall value, I think if he had retired at age 36 after those 10 years, I think he might be a unanimous Hall of Famer, because people would be talking about, the focus would be more on, what if he had started before he was 27, and think what his numbers could have been. But it was, or even if he retired after 2012, because those first 2 years of that bad stretch weren't as bad, but yeah, it was wild. So as for Sabathia, I'd vote for Sabathia. For me, it's crazy to me that Andrew Jones isn't in the Hall of Fame yet. I don't like Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones was my least favorite player in baseball before he signed with the Dodgers. And then his time with the Dodgers did not do anything to endear himself to me. But it's crazy to me that he's not in the Hall of Fame. He's so deserving as far as I'm concerned. But I think Sabathia and Ichiro are the only first timers next year who probably get in. Felix Hernandez is another one, through age 29. I know I'm talking for a little while, but that's okay. It's a podcast. I'm supposed to talk. Through age 29, Felix Hernandez had 49.9 WAR in his first 11 seasons through age 29. And it's you're starting to think this guy might end up being among the best right-handed pitchers in baseball history. And then just off a cliff, he only played 4 more seasons. His WAR in those 4 seasons was 0 combined. He had 49.9 WAR in those through age 29, and he retired with 49.9 career WAR. And so, some of it was injury, some of it was just ineffectiveness. But in the end, he was a guy who was a no doubt future Hall of Famer and then fell off a cliff. And for me, his case is similar to guys like Dale Murphy and Don Mattingly, who were no doubt Hall of Famers and yet aren't in the Hall of Fame yet because they had such a steep decline.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have enough time to kind of debate the merits of that, because for me, I guess if you can give me like a decade of being, top of the top, cream of the crop, I think, Hall of Fame for sure. And then anything after that, I don't know if I would hold off bad years against you if you're going up against age. Now, if something happened, or if it was like, steroids or something that happened that kind of got you against there, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, Felix, like I said, is an interesting case regardless of how bad he fell off. Just even his normal case is worthy of debate in terms of Hall of Fame. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Though, like I said, I think next year they'll be starting the steps for some of these guys like Andrew Jones and stuff to kind of start getting that bump, because next year there's only 2 newcomers that are deserving coming in. The year after that, there's not really anybody deserving coming in that's like first ballot. So they're gonna have to start. It's always a weird, and I know you kind of talk about this on Twitter. Like, it's a weird thing, first ballot versus 10th ballot, whatever the case is. I don't feel as strongly as you. I do think for whatever reason, maybe it's just because I'm accustomed to it, that they're I don't know, some kind of value to it to a certain extent. But yeah, I mean, it's for sure going to be interesting. I'm gonna have to get out there for CC though, because CC is a close personal friend of mine now, so I'm gonna have to be out there for him.
Yeah, the value in first ballot is this guy's case is so strong that everybody agreed immediately. That's the value. What drives me crazy is when, like, what brought it up when I mentioned on Twitter is somebody saying, well, Joe Mauer, he's a Hall of Famer, but not a first ballot Hall of Famer. No, if he's a Hall of Famer, he's a Hall of Famer. If you've decided he's a Hall of Famer, then he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. It's, the reason that, like, Chase Utley didn't get in on his first ballot, but that just means not everybody is smart enough to agree with me that Chase Utley is a Hall of Famer. But if there are people who are saying, I believe that Chase Utley is a Hall of Famer, but I don't think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, so I'm not voting for him, I think that's ridiculous. Hall of Famer is a Hall of Famer. If you have a vote and a guy's a Hall of Famer, you should vote for him, because that's your vote. You're voting for the Hall of Fame. It drives me crazy. And yeah, it's just one of those dumb distinctions that people make up.
Again.
All right. I think that'll do it for us for today. You got anything else, Vince?
Nothing.
All right. Thank you all for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, especially our everydayers. Be sure to become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. Be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSince91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog. Our DMs are open there. You can also email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message at 323-863-LOCK-5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.